We are live and waiting for Sophia to join. We're just live. We're just waiting for Sophia to come into the room. Welcome, people. This is going to be a 30 to 40 minute live. If you feel cool to stay around, we're going to be discussing some hot topics. I am just waiting for Sophia to come into the room. Let's see if she comes into the room. Invite to join. Oh, that's a new feature. Amazing. Let's see if this works. I've just invited her to join, which I didn't even know was a feature of this thing. Hey,
Yeah. We made it.
we made it. Hey, Sophia.
Hola. Hola, Leigh.
Hola. Amazing. Oh, it's so good to see you. Finally, we are
Sí.
in the space. You're looking fresh. Sophia, do you want to tell everyone where you're checking in from today?
Okay, so right now I'm in Mexico City,
Mm,
based here, from
mm,
London originally.
mm.
So yeah, it's like middle of the day here. It's evening where you are, right?
Yeah, it's 6:30. Yeah, 6:30 here. When did you move to
Cool.
Mexico?
It was a bit of a wild one, but yeah, 3 years ago I ended up here. I was following guidance given through like medicine experiences and ceremonies and kind of received
Mm,
certain insights. And
mm.
one of them was to actually find my friend Dragona. I'm at her house right now.
Is that her
Because I
name?
don't have a phone, so I'm using other people's technology to survive the matrix.
Amazing.
Yes. So yeah, I was living in the jungle for 2 years, like learning a lot about integration, healing, native lands, and
Mm,
yeah, local culture and things like that. And now I live in the city, which is a very different vibe to the jungle. But I'm very
mm.
happy here. I have a lot of community here, a lot of opportunities.
That's
And
beautiful.
also, I'm really grateful for this opportunity for us to connect because it's a really organic way that this has come to life. No, it's been actually like super improv. No.
Yeah, it has. It's definitely been improv. So I guess for clarity, we briefly met just online, right? Like a couple of weeks ago now, maybe
Yeah.
less than a month ago. And Sophia got in touch and wanted to talk about how a question around men's work, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it was you had put a story up, basically. We connected on Insta. You put a story up saying you're about to have a conversation with someone exploring men's work. And does
mm,
anyone have any questions? And my question was, how can women or female identifying people
mm,
best support men or male identifying in their awakening? And
mm,
I missed out on the answer to that
mm,
question in your conversation. And
mm,
that's when we were like, hey, well, why don't we actually just explore that in
mm,
person,
mm,
live, and just see, yeah, what came up in your discussion about
mm.
best support men in their journey of awakening.
It's a
So what
beautiful
was,
question.
tell me.
Beautiful question. I'd love to drop in. Sophia, how does this feel though? I'd love to drop us in with a few breaths just to sync us up a bit.
Okay, cool.
Does that feel good? Yeah? Amazing. I guess people like listening and watching can also kind of drop in with us. And yeah, invitation is to, find a comfortable seat, feel the ground beneath you, and close the eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. And just take an inhale in through the nose and then out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Big breath in, hold at the big sigh to release. Allowing our breath to settle and coming back to the screen. Mm.
nice in that space.
Yeah, it helps me. I'm like, oh, we're live. I'm like, okay, let's just take a deep breath. Amazing.
And I
So
had some
yeah,
coffee before, so my energy's like hyped, so I need
is
to like
it?
bring it down.
Okay, okay. Well, no, you're welcome to bring that if you feel like hype and want to just jump in at all. So the question that we were going to sit with was, how can women support men in their awakening? And I wanted to
Mhm.
kind of throw it back to you to kick off with, actually, and ask, why is that of interest to you as a question? Why did that question come up for you? Would you be open to sharing, like, what inspired you to share that question?
Well, that's a good question on its own. Okay, so I'm a coach. I coach men and women. I coach all sorts of people. I mean, really, the
Mm,
demographic of people I've been working with as a teacher and a coach spans adults in addiction recovery, children with special educational needs, adults in homelessness recovery, as well as able-bodied yoga,
mm,
Kundalini yoga, and now a transformational coach and a plant
wow.
medicine integration coach. So I'm working with a super broad variety of people, and I'm always seeking to understand different forms of techniques, different ways we can support each other, gender regardless, to be honest with you. Like,
Mm,
how can we best support each other? Um, and I'm curious, as someone who's female identifying, what men's work really entails. What are the staple pillars, the foundational kind of aspects
mm,
of that work? And interestingly enough, in the last weeks, I've noticed with my own clients that there's more of a call for me maybe to help facilitate women connecting with their femininity.
mm.
And anyway, it's just interesting, that polarity, and I really feel like, you know, in the awakening of this like feminine energy on the planet, it's all well and good for the female to rise up, but we have to bring the men with us, no? And it's like we have to support each other. So I want to
Mm,
understand how we can best do that.
beautiful. Firstly, just like big ups to the work that you do. Sounds incredible. Sounds so amazing. Like, yeah, there's a whole story there, and I'm curious, but maybe this isn't the right time to kind of dive into that, you know, like what brought you into that world. And I think you're so right. And actually, what came up for us during the conversation with me and Nigel when we were answering that question was this recognition that men do the work for the feminine, you know, and actually a big reason I recognize we as men create these healthy spaces for men to show up is so we can show up as healthier men in all of our lives, and especially in front of women, especially in front of women identifying people, feminine energy, whether that's your sister, whether that's your daughter, whether that's your mother. Because, you know, I spoke to this briefly with Nigel. It's like, damn, like the masculine wound of what impact the wounded masculine has had on this world is unfathomable, you know. And we're not here to create shame or play blame at all in different ways, but it's like having that in our awareness is why we do this stuff. And so I think what's coming up for me is this recognition of the work that you're doing, but also this reflection around, you know, why do men do this stuff? And actually, it's so early in my life. You know, it's only been a few years of dropping into this idea of what men's work is. You know, I'm not a father yet. I'm not someone who has birthed children into the world. I can only imagine that as a rites of passage, as well as like this incredible voyage and journey. And so, yeah, I guess for me, I really wanted to kind of entertain this question by asking you, you know, what inspired you to share it. And you've given a really beautiful reason for sharing, you know, why is it, what's inspired you to share it? And maybe we can have this conversation where if anything comes alive in you, you just like, you jump in and you're like, hey, have you thought about this?
Well,
Because I feel
yeah,
like
I
there
mean,
is something.
just something that, you know, I've really, through my own experiences and through living out my own shadow and, um, you know, the feminine wound too, and projecting onto masculine, blah, blah, blah. I find like I've done so much research on like the psychology and the spiritual principles of polarity, and I just I feel like the conclusion that I've come to, although I'm never arrived at a conclusion, like I'm always open to learning more, but I feel like ideally the man is able to be stable enough to hold the flow of the woman. And like when the woman feels safe enough, she can express her oracle or like her divine wisdom, even if it's wild, even if it's uncomfortable and it's dark, it's truth. But ideally, the man is able to witness that truth and hold that, you know, and not become reactive and emotionally kind of volatile, but actually just be able to witness it in like a stableness, in a stability. So like the woman can flow like water and like the man can be, you know, like stable like earth, like tree. And I think elements together are really complementary, like they both need each other, no?
It's the river, it's the
So I
bank
think
of the
that's
river. The bank of the river and the water that flows, right?
so I think that's like a healthy example of the expression of masculine and feminine coexisting. But when it comes to like, I don't know, say I'm coaching a man on his journey and I don't know the principles of men's work enough to be able to uh, signpost them. Like that's one thing I really like doing is being able to signpost people to different resources, philosophy or links, or it can be mantra, music, it can be like a kriya, whatever. So because I don't have personal experience in men's work, I'm really curious to know, like, you know, what do you encourage? What would you encourage someone who's like started in their awakening? They're seeking more stability in their lives and their spiritual connection or practice. They're seeking a more authentic way of relating with women. What are some of the foundational principles that you encourage men to explore and work with?
That's such a beautiful question. Amazing. So, just from the experiences in which I've had and the spaces in which I hold is mainly the perspective I can speak from. And so, with Emergent Men and the organization that I run, it's a lot about exploring how do you authentically express your emotion in a healthy way, firstly. And what does that mean? You know, how are you able to speak to your emotions that are coming up for you? You know, how can you be honest? How can you be an honest man? Like, what does an honest man look like? You know, what does an
The
authentic
honesty
man
thing.
like look like? You know, and what does someone who something? How do you share how you're feeling? Like real basic stuff, you know, in which I think what I realized in a lot of the men's spaces, like we go down to basics. People get really worried about like coming to our experiences, like what they might experience. And I'm just like, dude, I'm just gonna make you share how you're feeling in this moment. And
Yes.
like actually the mad
Yes.
amount of discomfort that can cause someone, you know, it's like what's going on for you right now here? You know, what are your fears? You know, what are you scared of? Can you share that with another man? You know, can you share some of your secrets with another man? You know, can you bring your shadow from the back of you round to the front of you? And can we look at that together? And how can this idea of brotherhood, yeah, exactly. How can this idea of brotherhood support you as a man to just be honest with how you're feeling, you know, speak to what's going on inside of you and be able to express different emotions in healthy ways? You may have seen the photos and the videos of what goes on in some of these men's spaces. There's a lot of anger, you know, there's a lot of like anger that's suppressed. And, you know, I think anger as an emotion is sometimes not held in a way that allows men to, or humans, allows not, you know, this is a spectrum, this is an all person thing. Can we create safe spaces for anger to be shown? You know, like your deep rage, you know, that wants to come up. And then actually, how do you create safe spaces in men's environments where actually all of you is welcome? Your anger, you know, your sadness, your grief, and your joy, you know, as well. Like getting men to go on this journey of expressing joy and happiness is as difficult as getting them to can be as difficult as getting a man to express their deepest pain and their deepest anger, right? And so, you know, using different practices and tools, we allow. So I guess like bringing it right back round to your question, what happens in these spaces is we create the space where men and those that identify as male have permission to freely express all that they are, as scary or as horrible or as incredibly beautiful as that
Mm-hmm.
is. And that is an exploration, you know, it's an exploration of allowing men to feel safe as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I think that's fundamental, like the safety, that's absolutely like foundational to healing or to anything really, if we don't feel safe enough to be who we are, as you say, and to express all parts of ourselves. That's,
Mm.
unconditionally positive, high regard is something that
Mm.
we want to be holding everyone in that space of like equality and neutrality and inclusivity, and it's like if something is coming up that needs to be expressed, as you say, creating the space for them to do that is everything. It really
Mm.
is. And
Mm.
integration of the shadow as well, like when we feel the shame, then it's suppressed, then our subconscious mind then starts to play out these stories that validate the subconscious belief. So that's why it's
Mm.
important to like subconscious programming. Then we have the cultural programming, the social programming. Then we have our
Mm.
own ancestral shit that we've inherited, It's
Mm.
like it's immense. Like there's so much work for
Oh my
us to
God.
do, and it's like this is our lifetime to do it. It's like
Mm.
this is our opportunity to do it. So it's amazing that this is the kind of work that you are doing.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and yeah, the expression of anger, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, I have my own channels for that, like Muay Thai and boxing,
Mhm.
and when
Mhm.
I have like physical catharsis,
Mhm.
But so would you say that's important for men that they have some kind of like physical outlet for
Uh,
any excess
yeah.
pent up rage?
I think absolutely, absolutely. I'm not that absolutely. Just to firstly kind of speak to one of the things you mentioned, just this like, you know, I don't know, sometimes you might be able to support me on this. You know, sometimes I'm just like, this is so overwhelming, like carrying all this and like
Mm-hmm.
doing all this work and you know, where's the, you know, the balance between constantly doing the work and being in it and healing the wounds and like going through intense emotional shifts, highs and lows, and then finding kind of that sweet spot. And I don't know if you know, if you have experience of like, does that exist,
Mm-hmm.
that sweet spot? And actually, what is that sweet spot, you know? And then how do you move towards that as someone who facilitates a lot of therapeutic spaces? And at times it's like, oh, I think I spoke to it, I think when we first checked in, or with, I was speaking to someone about holding space in Ibiza. And it's like after this container, like I dropped into like physical exhaustion for like 4 days, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how, any insight on that?
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's such a good question. Yeah, I have a few different responses. I love
Mm.
that question. So yeah, I mean, it's like from the Kybalion. This is like the most ancient philosophy that precedes science. So it's
Mm.
7 principles of laws of existence, and one talks about the pendulum that's always going to swing. And basically, there's that swinging of like being super disciplined and super like holding space and being super devoted and clean and dedicated. And other times that maybe we're like a bit more human and we're making fuck
Mm.
ups and not going so smooth and we're a bit messy. And that's the pendulum, like that's the balance, and that's always going to swing. So we want to try and transcend our consciousness so that we are less affected by the dramatic kind of sway of that
Mm.
pendulum. And I found in my own work, point two, like my own inner work, is that turning the awareness inwards and like having this like regular self connection with oneself, with one's body, with one's being. Like, okay, what do I need in this moment? When we start to sense that we're depleting our energy,
Mm.
pause and taking a moment to be like, what do I actually need in this moment? Like, is it rest? Is it I don't know, is it actually engaging with people? Is it a hug?
Mm,
Is it a good meal? Is it, you know, it could be meditation. There's so many things. So I
mm,
think it's important also as well. Point three is that when we're creating these containers, holding groups that are transforming their own energies, it's important, especially from a shamanic principle, to like, we open the space, we charge the space, and then we seal the space. Like we clear the space. You know, it's
mm,
important that we ourselves, as people who are working with a lot of different energies, a lot of different people, different bodies, different
mm,
processes, how can we actually like find a neutrality and an alignment amongst that all?
mm.
So yeah, that's where the tools and the techniques come in. We need to embody them and
Magic.
use them on ourselves now.
Yeah, yeah, so beautiful. Wow, that was so beautifully articulated. You had me in like a cosmic trance there, Sophia. You're like, that was like pure transmission. I was like, this is the most insightful. This is exactly what I need to hear right now. Because, and I think,
This is the oracle, though. This is it. If you
yeah,
know, if you create safety, then the woman can
yeah,
transmit that
yeah,
cosmic divine wisdom, you know. But it's
yeah,
really so foundational that the men can show the fuck up, like for
mm,
themselves and for the, because that patriarchal wound is just like, it's fucking boring now, you know. It's like we're over it, fucking
mm,
done, and shit
mm,
needs to change, and people are really doing the work, such as
mm,
yourself, to help support men in that
mm,
elevation is
mm,
fucking vital. And I think
mm,
that's what's really my interest. Like when I just saw your profile and I was like, wow, he does men's work. Thank the Lord
mm,
that there's people doing that, because it's vital, not just for men's uprising, but also for women and the whole planet, you know. So yeah,
mm.
raising got to be there.
Mm, so beautifully articulated. Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. And it's that ripple effect, isn't it? You know, and even like this representation of what we're both experiencing right now in this moment as an answer to the question, you know, how women can best support men in their awakening. You know, men do the work and women are doing the work, and then we come together. You know, the Rumi quote: "I don't want you to shine my light. I want you to shine your light so bright so that when we come together, we set the world on fire." It's this idea that we as individuals can do the work for ourselves. And then we come together, you know, men in men's spaces, women in women's spaces. And I'm a man that's yet to really, outside of maybe festival settings, go into mixed spaces, you know, and that's an exploration for me. And not like a mixed space where it's, you know, a festival or a conscious festival. Those spaces are beautiful. But like, you know, I want to witness, and you may have experience in this, maybe able to speak to this like masculine and feminine in the same space, doing the work together in front of each other, you know? And actually, like, what does that look like? How can I, as a man, represent the masculine wound in front of you so that you can do your work? How can I represent that? How can you, as a woman identifying person, represent the feminine for me as a man and allow me to do the work for all the wounds that I have around the feminine? And then how do we come together and do that together? Like that's ceremony, right? Like that's like ceremony. I think we always speak about it. I speak to it briefly in men's spaces. It's like, brothers, like the work starts when you leave the door, you know? The work starts when you walk out that door and you're back out in the world. It is great that we as men can meet up and do the dance and do the this and do that whilst we're in together in this beautiful building. That's amazing. We are allowing ourselves to be open to transformation and change. But let's like go take that. Go take that when the person at the restaurant says something rude to you. Like, let me see your work there, you know? Like that's it's like, show me that when you're in a traffic jam and you're 5 minutes late to work. Show me what you learned in ceremony in that moment, you know, because it's all
That's
fucking
really inspirational.
good that you can be like sacred and blessed while we're all sitting in a circle with our legs crossed. But who's the man that doesn't get triggered by his ex-partner posting something online? It's like, actually, like, where's the work there? So yeah, there's something there about that. I wonder if you've got experience or want to speak to that kind of piece around, you know, bringing it
Totally.
together.
Totally. I mean, it's integration of our wisdom, and we have
Mm,
to embody that. And
mm,
it's like the same yoga practice, for the years I've been practicing and teaching, it's like, yeah, it's well and good that we practice on our own bodies in the safe space of just us and ourselves. Not even that, sometimes doesn't even feel like a safe space. We have to cultivate a safety within ourselves. And then the practice comes off the mat, like really embody the wisdom, the philosophy, your way of being. That has to come in the day-to-day life and in our interactions, and recognizing that we're all living beings now, so we all deserve some level of like respect and compassion. So these are just foundational, you know, but I think in the modern world we've become disconnected from that, and it's all digitized and it's all kind of like capitalized, and we're losing touch of that like organic divine quality, that essence of like, well, heart consciousness. So that would be my next integrity. Number one, integration. Number two, honesty. So important, even when it's scary, having difficult conversations, but sharing from a place where we've like understood our own selves first, ideally, before we just vomit out onto someone else. Like taking the time to understand what's the root of that trigger, and kind of understand it, and then express it from a place of like non-violent communication, you know. Non-violent communication is super helpful in honest conversations, difficult conversations between men and men, men and women, whatever. And then the final piece for me, I think, is heart consciousness. And I used to be super disconnected from my heart. To be like, oh my God, my heart, I was like, oh, what heart? Like, oh. I would hear meditations that be like, we're going to connect to our hearts. And I'd be like, fuck off. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you have no idea how much pain I've been through. I'm fucking that. You know? So the process of reconnecting to one's own heart is a process, and it's not always easy. I think that's really important. If we're alive, it's because we have a heart that's beating, you know, and we're breathing. And as far as I'm concerned, like, if you can breathe, then you can practice yoga. You know, it's not that we have to do handstands and wear leggings. You know, for me, like, everyone deserves the same level of respect and appreciation and being seen and held in respect. And that's heart consciousness. It's known in Tantra as Hridaya. And it's like recognizing this like universal heart consciousness. And love is, it sounds so lame, but it's like love is what heals us. My favorite expression is, I did not come here to teach you, I came here to love you, and love will teach you.
Wow. That's beautiful. So beautiful, so beautiful. Thank you. And you know, it's fuck, this is medicine in so many ways. It's amazing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think to like reel it round to this concept of how do we as facilitators continue to do the work ourselves whilst looking after ourselves so that we may continue to look after others? And actually that's what's been coming through a lot recently, like as the evolution of consciousness is going through continual shifts and change and patterns, and has been, it feels like this period of awakening in which we're experiencing is unlike any other, you know, and what's going on a cosmic level, and as well as an intercosmic level, like on a cellular level, like what's changing and shifting. But it's like, yo, we need to look after ourselves, right? We need to look after our communities. We need to look after our own well-being. And I feel really just open to asking yourself as well, like, how do we do that as practitioners? And, you know, from your experience and being the leader that you are and what I've witnessed and what you're bringing through, how do we continue to look after ourselves, and then so that we can then show up? And then I'd like to then speak more about the men's and women's space, but this is really just coming through now. Like, what does that self-love heart look like? How do we do that, sister?
Great question. Really great question. And it's a constant practice, but it's understanding the tools that we have available. No, that what we practice, what we preach, no? We have to take care of ourselves to take care of others. And it's going to look different for everyone. For me personally, Kundalini is like the most powerful practice to like replenish and recharge energy. Also honoring in each moment, like, again, it's like knowing what are your go-tos. Like, what do you need? Don't be afraid to be selfish. Actually, it's being full. Be full of yourself. Be full. When your cup is full, we can serve other people. So sometimes that's saying no. That's understanding our limits and our boundaries. Saying no, knowing what we value, living in integrity with ourselves. Also, I mean, I love people. I'm very sociable. I love my friends, my community, my students, my clients. Oh my God, I have family all around the world. Like, I'm in love with all the people in my life, even those that have hurt me, because they teach me. And at the same time, sometimes I need to hermit, and I just need time where I close my door, and that's my time to rest. Not having a phone the last 2 weeks has been a gift. I've been less distracted, present, I'm walking everywhere. Buenos dias to absolutely everyone. You know, it's like I'm really giving time and attention to people because I'm giving time and attention to myself. So I think learning our own limits and honoring them feels like we're being selfish and we're letting people down. And it's like, no, we can tell people in one moment, very honestly, I'd love to, but I don't feel like it right now. I feel sensitive. I need to rest. I need this and that. Or I need a hug. Or can I come round for a tea? You know, it's like being really honest with what we need and want. With being honest with ourselves, no? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Hope
That
that
was,
helps.
yeah, without a doubt. And I feel in those few sentences, you were able to really answer the original question. You know, how can women best support men in their awakening? Honesty, you know, what you just spoke to that, letting people know what you want, you know, because I feel like
Yeah.
they give permission to the man to also be honest with what he wants, you know. So it's this point around being, yeah, just honesty. It's a simple word that means so much, you know,
Yeah.
and actually like really speaking to what's coming up. So thank you for sharing that. And I think, you know, even in my own reflection around like how do I look after myself, like taking my own medicine quite literally with like the ice therapy, and you know, going to the sweat and doing the things that I facilitate, and doing brotherhood activities outside of circles that really nourish me and fill my cup up, as well as like dropping into feminine presence and actually the feminine inside of me, you know, like let me slow down. And actually, how difficult is that for me? Quite difficult at times, you know, and actually giving myself the permission to slow down. Well, and I think when I speak about how do we in men's spaces connect more to the feminine, wow, that's really interesting, because I think there's a lot of men's spaces, all of them have their own approach, strategies, and intentions, where it's like masculine, warrior, king energy, you know, like let's fight and express. Amazing. I can honor that. I respect that. As well as like let's drop into the lover, you know, let's give each other massages, which is a practice in which we've facilitated through Sacred Sons. You know, let's create a massage train in this moment. Well, we've got 40 bros in a circle rubbing each other's backs. Like, people are like, what, this is men's work? I'm like, yes, you know, because we're just exploring emotions, you know, we're connecting with both the feminine and the masculine, so that we may be able to show up more for ourselves, for the masculine and the feminine in the outside world as well. So it's like, for myself, okay, how do I remember that? How do I acknowledge that and embody that? Because fundamentally, that's the most important thing as well. How do we embody the things we are here to share slash bring through, transmit? How do we embody these things so that we can then be the lights, you know, be the lighthouse? Because there's a lot of darkness, and we welcome the darkness with open arms, and we embrace it, and we say, I love you, I'm with you, and I'm here for you. And we allow ourselves to bring those parts of ourselves in which we're hiding from to the surface, so that we can heal them, you know, really heal them.
Totally.
And so, yeah.
That brings something else through for me, which firstly, when you're talking about connecting with your own inner feminine, I think it's like understanding that you deserve nurture, you know, nourishment, and that kind of like feminine quality of like taking care of oneself, no? It's so important that men can receive that, can learn to actually receive love rather than push it away because they think they don't deserve it or they're mis. It's like learning to actually honestly receive, and women too, to receive love. Like it's all well and good to project our love outwards, but what about turning that inwards? That's also where we need to work. And then coming into the shadow work, I mean, that's vital. And one of the main mantras of Kundalini yoga is Vahe Guru. And Vahe is like celebration. And Guru it means teacher, guru, but it also means darkness to light. And it means the darkness of our ignorance into the light of awareness.
Wow.
So it's like the celebration of our journey from darkness to light. And Vahe Guru is like a way of celebrating our own journey of bringing the shadow and illuminating it. Like I always say in my sessions, whether it's coaching or Kundalini or both, like turn towards every layer of yourself, like every aspect of yourself, every shadow, every sensation, every layer, like turn towards it rather than rejecting it. And there's so much philosophy I love to share on this. That's theory and philosophy, beautiful Indian mythology and stuff. And it's just like when we actually turn towards the thing that super scares us, it reduces damage by half, you know? But it's the resistance and the suppression and everything that creates this negative charge that really damages a lot of people around us. And I think that is the masculine rune, no, that's brought us into a world of like warfare, capitalism, consumerism. You know, it's like that kind of hunger. And actually, rather than hungering outside ourselves, it's just turning the awareness inwards. I think is where we create a sense of wholeness, a sense of compassion, and then we extend that compassion outwards to all beings everywhere. No?
It's so beautiful. Yeah, beautifully shared again, Sophia. Really, I love the way you articulate things and just bring it through. It's magic. Yeah, thank you. It's for me, I feel like we've been able to explore so many different areas of this topic, and it feels like there's so many layers to this, right? There's so many layers to this work, and I think there's some big kind of highlights for me, which is around this self-care, self-compassion, and especially with the masculine, you know, both being willing to invite the feminine, both in himself and then in the outside world, being willing to receive love as well, and being willing to accept love of ourselves, you know, self-love. And whether it's in men's spaces or women's spaces, like finding this balance. And that was it. So just a piece around like, what does this work where man and woman come together and do the work look like? And is that something that exists in your world? And is that something in which you're willing to kind of just speak to in these last kind of few minutes? Because I'm generally really interested, as someone who heavily facilitates a lot of men spaces, and yet to really venture into this like bridge.
Okay, I think it needs to happen more. I think there needs to be more spaces created for men and women to come together. There's two main examples that come to mind. One is working in it was a home, it was like a shelter actually for elderly, sort of like, oh, it was so beautiful. I just saw like these older women and older men, and they both kind of have their own like, I don't know, stories or whatever, but it was so beautiful sharing a practice where they can actually meet in a unity together. And it's like an equilibrium for them to just like enjoy actually each other's company and presence. Like so simple, but it was just the presence working in this. It was like an old people's home basically. And I saw the men and women coming together, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the cutest. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, you're just present with each other. That's number one. Number two, I was involved at the end of last year with a men and women's mixed sharing circle. And it was amazing, the insights that came through. What seems so obvious to a woman's experience, what seems so fucking obvious, once it's actually expressed, the guy's like, whoa, holy shit, I never thought about it that way. So it's like golden pennies dropping all over the place. And it was just like insights for the men to understand a woman better, her thought process, her feelings. And also then for women also to realize like where the male sort of dynamic is at. And yeah, so I think that's what's really interesting. It needs to happen more. Men and women having sharing circles, being super honest, and then we understand each other better, and we're facilitating difficult conversations. But actually, it's not that hard when you just turn towards it and just say what's there and realize everyone's thinking the same fucking thing.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so beautiful. Yeah, well put. Well put. Well put. It needs to happen more. I'm calling that in. And
But maybe when I come to Europe, we can create something.
Wow, the seed has now been planted, Sophia. The words are in. The seeds have been planted. That'd be beautiful. I'd love to explore that with you. That'd be amazing.
Cool.
And it feels like it's a beautiful transformation of not only this connection, but also of the work that we're doing. And I'd like to round this off in just asking, you know, I've started to upload these to the Solar, and they now exist on different streaming platforms, and I would just love if you felt cool to just share how people can stay connected with you and a bit more about the work that you do in case they are interested in reaching out, getting in touch at all.
Thank you so much. Well, firstly, for the opportunity to be here and to have this kind of discussion. So I'm Sophie Arkana, at sophie.arkana on Instagram. My website is www.arkana.yoga, and on there you can find out more about my offerings. I do coaching, transformational coaching. I work one-to-one, I work in groups. I work with yoga, different forms of yoga, movement, meditation, but specifically Kundalini yoga, the yoga of transformation. This is the most powerful form of yoga that I've discovered in my 14 years of trauma recovery. And so I love to share it, but from a place that's super inclusive, therapeutic. And yeah, for me, the combination of coaching and then finding an appropriate Kundalini practice to support that unique person's process it's been amazing watching my clients unravel into their highest selves. Amazing. And witnessing the changes in their lives. So I'm also working with shamanic principles, somatic principles, trauma-informed, trauma-trained, and really deep into as well. So I love to share it in a way that's modern, you know, it's like adapted for our modern states and conditions of being. So I say it's ancient ways for modern days. That's what I do.
So beautiful. You are a queen, Sophia. You are bringing through the codes strong in this lifetime. Just honoring you, appreciating you, and just giving absolute love and gratitude to the work that you are doing and you're bringing through. It's been so lovely. It's been lovely to get to meet more of you, and I just trust that. Let's let this marinade and simmer and keep in touch. And thank you so much for jumping on this without even knowing how it would happen. And it started something, you know, so thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for the work that you do and inviting me to do this. Yeah, I mean, doing live stuff is kind of a new thing for me, but something I want to move into as well. So I credit you for stepping into it because it's not easy, it's scary, but it's important. So thank you.
No,
and we're connected.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it's been beautiful, and it's been amazing. This has been magic. So thank you so much, and let's keep in touch. So much love to you, sister.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Till next time.
Gracias.
Adios.
Bye.